I'm Tim Johnson from Salem. I've been fishing most of my life, all my life. I started fly fishing in the 70s. Today I'm going to tie a fly that historically is called Partridge in Orange. This fly dates back at least to the mid-1800s. And I'm tying it on a size 14 standard nymph hook. This is a mustad. The hook number is 94845, barbless. I tie all my flies barbless hooks now. So this is a very simple fly. Originally it only had two components, just thread for the body and hackle for the legs. I'm going to add to that a little bit. This fly is the basis for a lot of flies that we tie today. So I'm just going to put some of this orange thread here on the shank. Orange is a good color. That's the body of a lot of caddis, which this fly primarily represents, a caddis pupa. The pupa stage of the bug is when it emerges out of the larva stage and starts moving around. A lot of times their bodies are orange. I said the original fly didn't have any ribbing, but I like to put at least a little ribbing in it. It gives the fly a little bit of flash. So this is copper ribbing, small, very, very small diameter on this ribbing. And I'm just going to wrap forward over that wire. I like to put just a little dubbing ball right about here. And you could use rabbit fur for that dubbing ball. I have some Australian possum here that I'll just use. The possum is really nice. It's the hair strands are long, and so it really makes a nice noodle, as you can see there. No wax needed. It just forms really nicely on the thread. So I'm just forming this little thorax for this bug. A little bit more. Don't want to make it too big. Want the proportions to be right for the size of this bug, but I'm going to build this up just a little bit more. Tighten that down. Okay, and wrap this wire forward before I go and get any further with this bug. So I'm just open wraps, try to space them evenly so it looks nice and uniform. I don't know the fish care, but I do. Yeah, we'll wrap that down, pinch that down into the thread, cut that off, and now we'll tie in Partridge. Comes off of a cape, Hungarian partridge. So I try to find barbs that are about the same length as the shank, so it doesn't extend back too far. And I just grab it with my fingernail here. So I'll put that tip down here, lay that tip down, and then take a couple wraps over it to secure the feather in place. Okay? And I'll just cut that excess off. You could just leave it in. It wouldn't cause any harm, because all these barbs from this feather are going to lay back over it. But anyway, usually we cut it off. And then take my hackle grabber here, make a couple wraps. A couple wraps is all you really need. You don't need to use all those barbs, because this is a pretty small fly. You don't need more than just a few of them. So I'm just securing it. Cut the rest of this feather off. Try not to cut any of my barbs. And then lay it back. Lay these barbs back. best you can, and then wrap some thread over the top of them, pinching them back like that. Okay, and then I'll finish that off with this whip finish. And what this whip finish does is lays down a whole bunch of half hitches to make sure the thread doesn't come loose later when it's in the water or when a fish bites on it. Usually I put a couple sets of them down. Cut some of these little errant burrs off. Now that dubbing bubble holds the barbs out, makes the fly look a little more lively in the water. This fly again represents an emerging caddis, pupa, coming up to the surface. I love fishing this fly as a dropper behind this possum booger. And this fly can swing freely in the current. So you can see these flies have some things in common. They're both considered caddis pupa imitators. They both have soft hackle collars. They both have a lot of sparkle. The sparkle in this fly is that copper rib I tied in. So the sun will hit that copper rib and light it up. This thing has flashaboo. It has gold oval tinsel. It's got that gold bead head, and it just shines brightly in the water. It's a deadly combination. I would normally finish this fly or any fly with a little head cement. I got this little applicator that I like, and so I can just bring a little bit of head cement to the surface, lay it on there like that. Some people will use different materials to tie the body. They'll use this pheasant tail barbs, and when they do that, they'll call this pheasant tail soft hackle. Or some people will use this peacock, some of these peacock fibers, either for the body or for that dubbing ball, or both. And you can see why. It's a gorgeous feather. It's very radiant, and it flashes in the water. The fish can't help but notice it. So there's a lot of ways. And some people use this dubbing for their for the body of the fly. So this and they'll call it a March Brown. So this fly is the basis for a lot of flies that we tie these days and give different names to it. But the origin is the orange partridge. You can tie this fly smaller, and it works. You know, the trick is just getting the barbs the right length for the shank of the hook. But I love size 14, mostly because it's a good size to represent the bugs that are in the water, and also it's got a nice gap, so you have a better chance of actually hooking a fish. As the hooks get smaller, the gap, the distance between the point of the hook and the shank, gets smaller and smaller, so it becomes harder to actually hook a fish. So this is a nice size. This is the fly we call a soft hackle.
Shall I see thy bright shores in the sunlight, the heather of hills and the rising of morn, the rolling grassy mist rolls east in the morning to run the wild hills of the Coollands above. Far away seaward, the green hill